Hello and welcome to Personable, a podcast focused on speaking to the world's best, enabling you to become the best you can be. My name is Harvey Bracken-Smith, and today I'm honored to be joined by Justin Rose. Justin is the former world #1 professional golf player. He won the US Open in 2013. He has 11 PGA Tour wins. He's won a gold medal at the Olympics, 25 pro wins, was the FedEx champion in 2018, and has won over $60 million in prize money. I feel hugely honored to speak to Justin today. So Justin, I wanted to get started. If you could take me through your childhood and how and why you got into golf.
Hi, Harvey. A treat to be on with you today, and congrats on the podcast. It's a great theme, and honored that you'd include me in trying to help people and guide them to be the best they can be, which I guess has been the goal of my career all along. But like you say, it all starts when you're a kid, and I think it always starts with a passion. And I think even for me, before that, it was just it was something that I think my parents could entertain me with. So they were all about it, right? If you can find something that, your young little toddler likes to do and can sort of entertain them, I think as a parent, you basically encourage that. But, for me, from a very, very early age, my mum bought me a little plastic set of clubs, and I'd be out in the garden just literally whacking a ball all day. So before I even knew what golf was all about, I had this sort of instinct that kind of captured my attention, and that was just hitting a ball. So kind of developing my hand-eye maybe from a very early age. But I think then my dad saw this as an opportunity for him to get out on the golf course more. So he was like, I can work with this. So I think probably from about the age of 5, my dad sort of became sort of very involved in the sense of taking me down to the golf club every afternoon and having a bit of fun with me. But I think he also saw it as his meal ticket to get out and play a bit more golf as well. Because if he would take me with him, he was granted carte blanche to go play whenever he wanted. So. But that kind of was a fun part of our journey. We obviously had developed a great bond with each other around the game of golf. And I think that my dad kept it, sort of balanced that knife edge, I suppose, of kind of keeping me interested, progressing my game through coaching. He coached me ultimately until I turned pro, but he kept it fun for me. So, even going back to like the age of 5, he would set me little targets, mini goals. And I think I remember, obviously age 5 is a pretty early memory, but I think I remember him creating a goal. If I broke 70 for 9 holes, I'd get train sets or something like that. And if I look back at that, that's the perseverance to be able to shoot 70 for 9 holes is unbelievable. That must be absolutely torturous. I had a lot of shots for 9 holes, but obviously there was something in me that enjoyed the challenge or enjoyed the goal at the other end of the train set or whatever it might be. But I think he also engaged me on a day-to-day level with, hey, if you can chip it inside me, we get a Mars bar on the way home. And some good old-fashioned bribery definitely kept me going in the early years. But I think because I played at such an early age, I took to it, maybe had a certain amount of ability towards the game. And then from there, I felt like I was ahead of my peer group at an early age with golf. So, age 10, I was much better than the 12-year-olds. And at 12, I was beating the 15-year-olds. And as a kid, that's sort of your metric. Oh, I'm better than my kids my age. I must be good at it. So that kind of kept giving me the enthusiasm to make the sacrifices that ultimately I was going to have to make through my teenage years when life gets a bit more busy, school gets involved, you play other sports, your friends are going out, girls come onto the scene, all these things that are potential pathways in your life. The fact that I'd already sort of had this sense of, I don't want to say I was beholden to my abilities, but I realized I was ahead of the game and I had this opportunity to do something in golf. Therefore, when it came time to make those sacrifices, those decisions weren't that difficult because I was already having a lot of reward and a lot of feedback that I was on the right path. And, ultimately that made school a little bit of a secondary thought for me, really. And I kind of did my GCSEs and left school and played a full-time season of amateur golf where I continued to progress nicely and ultimately had a great finish in the Open Championship and turned pro. But that's a quick little kind of walk through sort of my progression as an amateur. But if I just look back at it as a whole, I would say it was just, I did a lot of learning. I traveled the world. I played in in county teams, international teams. And so I did a lot of growing up really through the game of golf. And I think one thing that the game of golf gave me was the ability to interact with adults at a very, very early age, because my golf was on a par, not to use a pun, but my golf was on a par with adults. So I put in environments where I was around them a lot, and therefore you're expected to behave in a certain way as well. So I feel like from a maturing point of view, golf definitely helped me, from a social side of life as well as anything else. That maybe school that I, ultimately not furthering my education might have been to my detriment. But I think what I learned at a very early age through golf kind of helped me balance that out.
Yeah, I think to put that into perspective, what you accomplished it was 17, all right? You were 17.
Yeah, at Royal
So,
Berkeley, 98 Open. Yeah,
I'm 20 now. So that was you 3 years younger than me. You accomplished something incredible. But what I think is fascinating about your sort of like life growing up from when you were 5 up to that point is, at least from how you've said it, it seemed pretty linear. I feel like a lot of the other people that even in those younger years, they have a point in time when, oh, I wasn't as good as the 12-year-olds, and so I got a bit better. You kind of had that linear path, and then you do exceptionally well. You come fourth, you turn pro the next day, but then a story you've probably told a billion times, and perhaps you're bored of telling it. But you then, you get cut 21 consecutive times, not
yeah.
making it past the second round. How do you deal with the setbacks after having such a linear path of success in your childhood?
It's a really, really great question because, like anything in life, I really try to preach that there is no linear path to the top, and that ultimate only ever truly learn from the struggles in life. You've got to be, to pick apart victories and what you're doing well and learn from them is one of the hardest things to do, I think. When you're winning and when things are going well, it generally feels easy. And I think that it's really through the setbacks is where you really make the biggest strides. You don't want it, you don't like the feeling at the time, but that's how you need to pivot, right? If you can, we try to say to the kids now, even, and in our family, we have a bit of a saying, there's no failure, there's only feedback. So I think in my amateur career, there must have been setbacks, right? But as you kind of look back in your past, it's like the stock market over time, it looks quite linear.
Yeah.
But, when you're going through it in the moment, there's many, many multiple ups and downs. But as you extrapolate out and you look at the overall picture, it's kind of a gentle increasing line left to right. But I think for me, let's just say it was fairly linear through my amateur career, yes. And then I have this sort of meteoric rise to fame, I suppose. And that was the event. That was the outlier. I wasn't ready for the notoriety and the household name status and all of these types of things. I made a decision to turn pro knowing I was a very young man, 17 years of age. Obviously I was nearly 18, but call it 17. I realized I wasn't the finished article as a golfer, ready to go and compete with the world's best. But we made a decision as a family that the best place to learn about the Pro Tour is the Pro Tour. So I was turning pro after the Open Championship, no matter what happened. But I think the fact I finished fourth and nearly won the Open as an amateur at 17, the world expectation was, right, here's this new wonder kid to rival Tiger Woods, and this is going to be a great rivalry, and this, that, and the other. And I wasn't ready for that mentally, and I don't think my game was ready for that either, technically or physically. So we had this 3-year plan, but I got caught up in the expectations. I think the team around me got caught up with those expectations. And ultimately, I wasn't able to deliver and live up to those expectations. But if we, again, zoom back out, the 3-year plan was remarkably accurate. Yes, I missed 21 missed cuts in my first season. I had to drop down, a category down onto the Challenge Tour, which is the tour below the European Tour, and had to sort of cut my teeth there a little bit. And then got my card through Q School, which is a grueling 6-round event. I then kind of got back onto the European Tour, lost my tour card again. Well, lost my tour card, but just by a few €1,000 at the time, to drop back to the qualifying school again, the grueling 6-round tournament. Got my card back again, then kept my card for the first time that year. The second season, second full season as a pro. And then by the time the third year kicked in, I was sort of up and running. So the 3-year plan was actually very realistic. Just the Open Championship skewed for a period of time my expectations and everybody's expectations around me. And I think I was probably very close to that being a very damaging and irreversible moment in my career. There's been so many phenom talents that have come out, and you see them for a moment, flash in the pan, wow, this great performance, and players don't go on to achieve their potential, and before you know it, you never hear of them again. So I think I could have been one of those stories for sure, and I think that I had a couple things to be very grateful for. I have a great family and a great sort of support network around me, and I think that they kept me super grounded. And although my dad was instrumentally involved in my career with coaching and all those things, he was also, a very calming influence. And then I think just my mother as well at the time was just made me realize that life's not all about golf, and just gave me some great perspective too. So I think just having a very stable and solid family background, I think helped me get through a lot of those very, at the time, emotionally upsetting, events, one after another after another. And then I also had this sort of just belief in hard work, to be honest with you. I kind of, the equation that I set myself was, yes, I have a little bit of talent to play the game. And if I couple that talent with hard work, surely there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I think I put all of my faith in that equation. Talent plus hard work equals ultimate success eventually. I don't know when that's going to be. But I think the other thing that I was able to do at the time was I needed to forget the Open Championship. That was a huge giving factor. I had to stop trying to live up to being that player. And I had to start to build my own momentum. And I remember saying to myself, okay, if I miss the cut, if I missed the cut by 6 one week and the following week I missed the cut by 4, instead of beating myself further into the ground and saying that's another missed cut, another failure, I would say, okay, you're growing, you're gaining a little bit of momentum, you're getting just a little bit better. So I had to start to build myself out of the dirt, so instead of pounding myself further into the ground with failure after failure, I had to spin it in a certain way and tell myself a slightly different story to create my own momentum out of that hole. And I think that's great advice to myself now. The way you talk to yourself, your self-talk, your mental kind of balance sheet that we all run, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. And normally it's subconsciously, the way we talk to ourselves. But I think if we can start to consciously sometimes override our private voice, our inner voice, and start to look at like a balance sheet, I think that's super important. And it's probably something I've had to do recently again as well. Just golf doesn't get any easier. You start to age a little bit. These youngsters start to play amazing golf. Confidence is quite fickle, but sometimes your confidence, you have to bully your way back into feeling confident. And I think sometimes it's a choice, because you can't always wait for results to turn to get the confidence. It's that classic chicken and egg thing. What comes first? But is it results? Do results breed confidence, or do confidence breed results? So yeah, for me, you can't always wait for the results to breed that confidence. You have to be on the front foot and kind of create it through intentional and sometimes very structured self.
I think in theory, a lot of those ideas sound incredible. Like you've been cut, just keep going, have that tunnel sort of vision. Don't worry about anyone else. But like, I think unless you're Justin Rose, it's quite hard to relate to you in that case. Like suddenly after you become like world famous, pretty much, you've got every agent under the sun probably wants you. Every sponsor under the sun wants you. Every person in every form of media is probably writing about you. And then when you do well, you're on top of the world, like you're competing with Tiger Woods. To suddenly, I haven't read the articles, but I'm probably going to be like, oh, Justin Rose fell off, or,
Rose will. You've got all the classic headlines there.
I should have banged out about 10 there and just kept going. I thought maybe that would have been quite funny. But why do you think you just had this inner perseverance to keep going? I mean, you're still only a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid. Go back to education, do something else. Well done, Justin, you tried it. Like, what do you think had this, like, I don't think you can teach this, but where did you have this, like, inner burning desire, I would say, to just keep going, and people are telling you you're rubbish and you miss another cut and you miss another cut. But you just want to keep going and keep going. And then even once you make it through that spell, to keep rising to the top, like it didn't end. You weren't like, oh, wow, I've started to make cuts now, I can stop. But no, I still have that desire to keep getting better and better and better. And the other players are giving me chat, and, you keep having this mindset to keep getting to the top. Like, how would you describe that inner desire that you had to just keep getting to the top, which you probably still have now?
I do still have that now, and I think that's the one thing I'm grateful for, and it's the one thing I'm hope keeps going for as long as possible. But it's a passion, right? I have a passion for the sport, and I think that, like I think anything in life, to work truly hard at something, you have to have a passion for it, because you simply cannot go through the grind and put in the requisite amount of work that it takes to really get to the top in something that you don't have an intrinsic passion for. Because I don't think anyone's disciplined enough to do the right amount of hard work if it feels like work. Um, the minute it's a passion, the work doesn't always feel challenging. It doesn't always feel like work. It can feel, you can get those feelings of like curiosity and experimentation, playfulness out of work when you have a passion for something. So I think that's the only thing that really got me through, is that I never stopped loving the game of golf, and I never felt bitter about the game of golf. And I think also I hadn't achieved anything yet. I had no option. All of my childhood dreams were still ahead of me. I hadn't ticked anything off of my list. So yes, I'd failed already, but I hadn't succeeded. So there was no choice. I had to just keep going towards what I still believed were my childhood dreams. I wasn't ready to give up on my childhood dreams. I've seen a lot of other players at different times in their career go through these sort of like very catastrophic kind of miscut sort of slumps. And I truly think it's harder to come back from those when you've already achieved greatness, or you've been to world number one, and then you have this big fall off. And then you start to question, do I have it in me? Do I really still have a passion for the game? I've kind of proved it to myself and everybody else that I've accomplished something in the sport. So, I give a lot of credit to guys that do come back from big slumps after having achieved something. Because I think for me at the time as a kid, I'm like, I got no plan B. And quite honestly, I didn't have a plan B. And that's not something I would stand here and preach to my children and say, you got to go all in on something. But I think you do have to go all in on something at some point in your life, and that there's always a right time to do that. Age 16, probably not the right time for 99.9% of people. But at some point in life, you do have to go all in. You can't keep hedging left and right and, and looking to sort of have the safety blanket of backup plan, because, you have to sometimes take a risk and chase something down and chase that dream and have a little bit of desperation in there as well. And I think, I had to probably, and part of me, because of the way my career worked early, I often feel my most comfortable now when I'm in a little bit of a rut and my back's against the wall. And I'm a little bit of a scrapper because of it. And I like to fight my way out of trouble. And I like to feel like I have to prove something to myself. I think maybe there's some scar tissue because of that early start to my career, where when things are plain sailing, maybe I don't quite know how to handle it. So, for me, the adversity is something I thrive off in a way. Certainly keeps me humble. That's one thing I really believe that I taught early in my career. I never was afforded the luxury of being able to get ahead of myself. The game kicked me in the nuts pretty early. And, you learn to respect it because of that, and you never quite know what's around the corner. So it's kind of like fight or flight. You're kind of always a little bit on your toes because of, how easy it is to fall off. So this kind of kept me with a work ethic. And I think one word a lot of my team around me uses perseverance. I'm willing to persevere. I'm willing to go through the tougher moments, the months, the weeks, the months, the years, whatever it might feel or whatever it might be. I'm willing to kind of grind through that without the feeling of reward, in order to ultimately get to the goal. And I think that I learned that early in my career.
Something that just came to mind about you kind of talked about it there, about feeling backed into a corner. I think there's a book by, I'm going to say the name wrong, but I think it's like Sun Tzu, The Art of War, in which it's basically like a war book. And if you make an enemy feel like they're backed into a corner, that's the worst thing you can possibly do, because it just brings out this inner desire. And I feel like with you being able to capture that in golf and use that as a driving force, I feel like that's incredibly powerful. What I think is a big differentiator between golf and a lot of other sports, it's like I'm based out in the US right now, and American football is a prime example. Yeah. Many of these players, sure, they might have some, innate thing that makes them be able to read the game, but they run off playbooks. They're literally told where and how to run and who to stop. And so a lot of their game is focused on how can I get as fast as possible, or how can I get as strong as possible. Golf, from my opinion, from my perspective, is not like that. So when you were like younger and even going up through the years, when you started to go from where you are, you start to make cuts and then you start to win you start to win events. What did you need to improve both mentally and technically to get to that point?
So yeah, I think when I look at golf, there's like games within games, right? You have your long game, which can be very power driven. You have players who hit the ball an incredibly long way. You have your approach play, which would be your iron play, where you have some players that are incredibly accurate. You have other players who draft off their short game. They're incredibly creative and skillful around the greens. And then you have a whole other game within the game, which is the putting. And that's a whole different sort of level of creativity, visualization, and obviously the element of science there too, with dealing with slopes and angles and topography and things like that. So there's many skill sets in the game of golf, and then you have the overarching, all-encompassing mindset side. So you'll have a lot of players who are very, very good at 2 or 3 of those skills, but there's quite often a glaring weakness somewhere in that sort of 4 or 5 facets that I just mentioned. And I think with me over time, when I got to world number 1, I'd say truly I sharpened up my putting. So, you look at it from a bit of a Moneyball approach. Obviously, that great movie that came out that sort of taught us of how they're, I think Chelsea are dealing with it right now, or even Brighton. They really take this approach of how to draft and sign players through metrics. And, as golf's evolved and science and all the data collection and stuff that's now able to be collected out on tour, you start to view your game very differently. And it became apparent really with me where my gaps were. And it was really around the putting. And all I had to do was improve my putting by 0.4 of a shot per round. And that was going to be enough, provided all the other categories stayed in place, which is the hard part. But that was the bump I needed in order to elevate my game to being, world number 1. And I really did put a lot of focus on that. And but like it's like life, that's very hard to focus on one area of improvement and have everything else remain the same. Because it's only you put your attention somewhere, by nature something else is going to suffer. So that's the hard part as we try to balance our life, right? And so I think, but anyway, the point is that I was able to find that 0.4, elevate my game, get to world number 1. I don't quite remember back in the 21 miscut days how I was really able to kind of juggle it all to kind of find that next level. I just think that was through maturing and just getting slightly better and just kind of evolving as a golfer and probably more mentally improving. But as I began to really find those, I played at the top 10 level for about a decade consistently, but it was that one little micro shift that took me to the top. And then I say about having everything in balance, right? I don't really believe in that concept. I think that's such a pressure in our lives to say, hey, you need to live a balanced life. You need to be spiritual and this and that, time for your friends and be a great son or daughter or parent or whatever it is. I just think that's so unachievable in the modern world, possibly. But to be successful at anything takes an incredible amount of sacrifice. So I think that the biggest skill is how you counterbalance. And for me, like nothing really ever that exciting happens in balance. By nature of it, it's, you're kind of in the middle. So the sort of the heart rate stopping stuff or extreme sports stuff, it's always when you kind of get into the edge. That's where edge of performance is. That's where people that are really daring to kind of take it to the limit, that's where they exist, right? But if you push too hard, guess what? You crash and burn. And the same thing in life. And I think the skill is being able to get to the edge of the cliff, be able to kind of see over the edge, but then realize, I've got to now peel back to center and just moderate a little bit, because there's time. You've got to retreat occasionally in life and take care of other things, relationships and all these types of things. But the skill is learning when you get to the edge, you push really hard, come back to center for a while, counterbalance. But you do have to push yourself at times in your life in certain direction.
I think there's a misconception for many people that aren't in business that the more people you have working for you, the easier it is. Like you have this person who can do this for you and this person can do this for you. Just like looking at your website, I saw you have a caddy. You had your wife listed there. You have a swing coach, putting coach, health and performance specialist, a golf and fitness specialist, performance coach, and an EA. So how do you maintain, I'm not going to say balance, I'm going to use your word of counterbalance, all of these people who are doing their best to try and help your game, whilst you also have your personal life going on? You know, you have the internal scoreboard of how well you didn't do that round and the day before. Like, how do you make sure that, you know, one of your coaches is saying you need to spend more time doing this, but you think you need to spend more time doing something else? Like, how do you like manage all of those people whilst also managing your scoreboard, whilst also managing your personal life and how you've done that day? Oh, I think I need to improve my driving when your putting coach is like, Justin, you
Yeah.
need to spend 4 hours doing that. Like, how does that all weave together for you?
Yeah, I think firstly, I think no one's really prescribing me workout routines and plans to a point where I'm having to be beholden to someone's idea that this is what I need to do. I think the one area of my life that maybe works that way is around the fitness and the physical side. I think that's a bit of certainly as I'm getting a little bit older, that's the one part of my life that I struggle to, or that I can't sort of outsource or ignore or neglect, right? I think for me to be a great golfer, I need access to my body. And I think if I have that, then I still have the opportunity to be great. So that's the one area that I think, okay, if someone says I need to do this, I kind of need to do that. Other than that, it's a little bit more of less is more. If I'm quite clear mentally, so I think as long as I have a blueprint around what I'm trying to work towards, a lot of it can be done in my mind. A lot of it can be done with visualization. A lot of it can be done away from the golf course. And then as I've gotten older, more time hitting balls, more time hit on the driving range doesn't always benefit me. You know, you kind of have the attrition of doing that on the body doesn't always help. So, and then also hitting more balls, getting into worse habits. Like, again, the clarity is the only thing that really helps me. So if my coaches can create clarity, then that often means I can get away with doing less. So I think that's the most important thing that they can give me at the moment, is not prescribing more for me, but just giving me clarity. And then I think it is truly like a CEO, listening to everybody's opinions, distilling them into an idea and going, okay, yes, this is the strategy I want to take, or this is the direction we should all move. That does need to come from the top ultimately. But I think if you get a very cohesive team, it's like, I've often said, it's like bowling with the bumpers up, because then if I veer off course slightly, which happens a lot, there's somebody just with a kind hand just to sort of like nudge you back on track. And I think that team that's working around you, that if everyone's pushing in the right direction, and that direction needs to be set from the top, i.e., what are my goals, what are my dreams, and if everybody's on board and doing it for the right reasons, of course, you pay all of these coaches, they're they're professional in nature, they're doing it as a career. But the top people in anything are doing it for more than just monetary reward. They have a real ambition to achieve something. And I think if you can surround yourself with like-minded people who have similar goals, you work. So, 1 + 1 = 10 in the end, because, you're kind of getting everybody working on the same page. Right. So, that's one of the hardest things, is to curate and create a team. I think we've almost coined #Team Rose, right? I think I was one of the first golfers to really kind of assemble what I felt was a team. And at times those teams have sort of fallen apart or broken up, or there's been one key figurehead that's moved in a different direction, and it sort of changes the sum of the parts. But having a cohesive team is so valuable. And I've definitely had that for spells of my career. And often that's coincided with me playing my best golf. And I actually think the last couple of years, actually, I think working myself back into having a really core group again. And I think we're beginning to see results pay off because of that clarity.
I've done a previous podcast with a lady called Anna Hemings, and Anna is a world champion kayaker. I think she's won it like 11 times or something like that. And she described to me that at the start of the race, there is no difference between the training that she or any of her competitors have done. And so the main differentiator for her was just having that innate drive to outperform and outrace everyone. And also, similarly to you, using techniques like visualization to imagine struggles in the race and where she'd previously not done as well in order to win and get those consistent titles. What do you think for you is the biggest differentiator between the top players and from those that go and make the cuts to those that actually go about winning championships?
It's a great question, and sometimes it's very hard to put your finger on that. I think at the moment, obviously experience counts for a lot, but at the same time, we're seeing a lot of young players really coming through and competing and getting after these big championships at a very early age. They're not having to pay their dues quite as much as maybe as historically been the storyline. Okay, well, you're only in golf, typically age 30, 31 was the historical prime. You need to pay your dues, take your losses, learn from them, and that's when you're in your prime. We're not seeing that mindset so much. I think Tiger kind of accelerated everybody's vision of what was possible. So I think you have a new benchmark set by previous generations, and then the next generation come out and they don't believe in the old, mental constructs that were fed to you. They now go, well, no, look, this guy's capable of this. This is what I'm capable of. So I think things get pushed on by different generations for sure. But what I'm seeing out on tour, the trends at the moment is sort of people that are beginning to take their training into the ugly zone. So they're not just hitting golf balls on the range, and which kind of sometimes feels quite routine, and you get into a nice rhythm, and then you go out onto the golf course and everything changes, right? So for example, it's very easy to stand on the range and just hit 7-irons, shot after shot after shot, and the ball lands 180 yards pretty much regularly, quite close to the pin, and very easy to feel good about yourself in that scenario. Oh, I'm swinging the club well, I'm hitting the ball well. But what happens is you get onto the first hole of the tournament and you've got 173 yards to the pin. And your normal 7-iron's 180, and you've just been hitting loads of those on the golf course, on the driving range. But now actually you haven't really figured out, now you've got to make a micro adjustment in the moment. And that changes everything. So I think, to answer your question, I think what the top players are really doing well these days is they're doing the bridge work between technical and performance, and they're kind of practicing in the ugly zone, which is it's a way of making your practice very difficult and stress testing yourself a little bit more. So you're basically trying to simulate what it's actually, all the skills are actually required on the golf course. And again, we have a lot more data around the parameters of what makes a good shot from a certain distance. So you can use all of these figures and facts to kind of help guide your practice. But it's a very intense way of practicing. So I think we're seeing that. I'm seeing a lot more of that intensity out on tour in practice now, rather than guys just swishing away and making the swing look pretty and feel good. They're actually, really working on performance metrics and parameters, and it takes a lot of mental energy to do that. And actually, to be honest, that's an area that I need to be a little bit better at, if I'm honest. And we're calling it bridge work in my team. How do we bridge the gap between the range and tournament situation?
You mentioned clarity, and I want to draw parallels to another podcast I did with a tennis player called Tim Henman, who you might know. And I think there's a lot of similarities between tennis and golf in the idea that for tennis, there's every point. For golf, there's every shot or every hole. And, in tennis, it's all about these micro wins. You mentioned that before in becoming world number one. It was with your putting. You had to make these micro adjustments. But every point, you can't win every point. It's about the points that matter. It's about the shots that matter. It's about winning the holes that matter at the end of the day. But as I said, like in tennis, you're going to lose a lot of points. And so I asked him, I was like, if you've lost a point, how do you stop yourself from being, fuck's sake, like, I just lost this point, like, I'm going to lose the next one. And he said it was all about just focusing on the next point. But I feel like that can be particularly hard, particularly for a lot of amateur golfers. So for you, is it about just every shot, you've hit a bad shot, just bring yourself back to the counterbalance, bring about back to center, focus on the next shot? Or is there some other mental framework that you use to enable yourself to fully focus on the next shot and hitting the best shot possible?
I mean, it's such a cliche, one shot at a time, isn't it? Whenever you watch golf and some guy's getting interviewed and he's playing well, he's like, man, I was just in the moment today. I just kept it one shot at a time, and kept trying to stay loose off the ball, but stay. It's so easy to say, so hard to do. But talking to Tim, who's a good friend, actually, reminds me of the Roger Federer address that he gave at a university recently, and he won 53% of his career points, I believe, and he's the greatest of all time. So it just shows you that he pivoted. He lost on those 47 percentage points that he lost. He didn't run a story about him. he was able to probably reset better than most, and he won 80-something% of his matches off 53% winning points. So it does show you how you need to absorb a lot of failure out there, but you can't take it on board. You just need to park it. And I think one thing I'll say to myself is, I don't know if it's good or bad yet. I miss a green with a 7-iron. I don't know if it's good or bad yet. I might hold a bunker shot. I might chip in. I don't know if it's good or bad yet. So don't attach a story to it, because I don't know if it's good or bad yet. I just think it's only a bad shot if you compound it. And I think the only other thing that's tough with golf is that you just got me thinking about tennis there. But if you have a bad set in tennis, the slate's wiped clean. You can play a great set of tennis and lose 7-6 or 6-7, or you can play a terrible set of tennis and lose 6-love. But I suppose you carry it with you, but you've just lost a set, right? But then the slate's wiped clean. Whereas in golf, you make a triple bogey, you carry that mistake with you 3-4 days. It's on the record, it's on the scorecard, it's on the tally. So, for me, it's about not compounding your errors in golf. And I think that's where you need to really you're going to make mistakes. You have to accept that you're going to make mistakes. It's certainly a game that's not a game of perfect. And there's going to be, the other thing is that there's the rub of the green stuff that you can't, your ball lands in a divot. You hit a perfect shot, finishes in a divot. It's like, I didn't deserve that. But you just got to accept all these little things, and you've got to realize that if you react well to all of these things that happen over the course of 4 days, you're not going to compound mistake. That's ultimately going to take you further up the leaderboard than you otherwise would have been. And you've got to realize it's a bit of a marathon, not a sprint. And sometimes it feels like you're the only player on the golf course that these things are happening to. But you've got to have the perspective of just the better you can handle and absorb all of those like little mistakes or frustrations or moments where things aren't going your way. The better you handle it, ultimately, the better you're going to be, at the end of the tournament. But that is a skill, honestly. It's and it's not. I don't think it's natural. And often I say to if I'm talking to junior golfers, actually, I'll often just play a little story out in their heads and be like, there's 2 boys playing golf. One boy misses the green to the left, puts his club back in the bag, walks towards his next shot. His playing partner also misses the green to the left, but slams his club back into the bag and puffs and puffs his way up to his ball. Which kid do you think's trying harder? I guess for some kids, it looks like the kid who's frustrated is trying harder because there's more emotion involved, but that's the easy response. Anybody is capable of that type of response. But the kid that's trying harder is the one that's super calm and just sort of approaching the next shot with a bit more of a level playing field rather than all the cortisol that's running through your system. I think that's the way you got to see things. That if you have an emotional response, you're having a physical response as well. So now your body has a whole different set of parameters, adrenaline, cortisol, all these things running through the system that we tried not to believe make a difference, because you're like, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah, I can get myself back in the game quickly, but physically there's a toll to losing, to losing your cool as well. So I think you've got to realize that mentally it's good for you, but actually you're having physical changes in your body as well by not keeping your mindset together.
I've had my fair share playing golf with my grandma, in which I've tried to force the ball, particularly after I've hit one bad shot. I've always felt like I have to force the next one. And then I always get it on the green. But for other people, I feel like that can be a big struggle. That was a joke, by the way. So you mentioned having not been able to achieve your childhood dream at only 17, which I think is pretty realistic. I think you far outweighed that. But that wasn't the end of your career. You then won the US Open in 2013. You won an Olympic gold medal in 2016, which was the first Olympics in over 100 years, and even getting a hole-in-one. You became the world #1 in 2017, and you've won the Ryder Cup multiple times. Out of those, which of those do you think most aligned with achieving your childhood dream?
I think for me, it was winning the US Open was the one that resonated the most with me, as what I dreamed about as a kid was winning a major championship, and it would probably have been winning the Open, which is obviously the one played in the UK, but winning the US Open, next best thing. Obviously winning the Masters is something most kids dream about when they think about a golf career as well. I've had my heartaches as well in my career. Yeah, I've had some, beautiful wins, but lost in the, lost in the playoff in the Masters and things that also sting, right? But you're never going to skip through a career without a little bit of pain, a little bit of heartbreak. And I think if I look back at my win in 2013, I was kind of coming into what I felt was the prime of my career. I just won on the PGA Tour in 2010. I'd won a playoff event in 2011. I'd won a World Golf Championship in 2012. So it was like I was on this nice linear progression again of winning big tournaments or bigger tournaments. And then the next stop was winning a major championship. And, I kind of completed that linear run, I suppose, in 2013 by winning a major. And I was top 5 in the world player at the time. So I kind of had this mental construct around age 30 to 40, so i.e. from 2010 to 2020, that this was my time to win major championships. And there's going to be 40 major championships played within that decade. And I'm going to win some and I'm going to lose some. I'd already accepted the fact that I'm going to put myself in some situations where in retrospect, I'm going to be like, that one got away. So the reason for me framing it that way was that when I had my chance to win my first major, I wasn't going to make it too big a moment. I wasn't going to strangle the opportunity. I wasn't going to squeeze it like a bar of soap. Like the harder you squeeze, the more elusive it is. So I'd already accepted that if I just run my process really, really well for the next decade, I'm going to give myself chances to win majors. I'm going to win majors and I'm going to lose majors. So actually quite quickly in that whole narrative came, Merion came along, and it was one of the weeks that I did the best job of that. I stayed in my process, stayed in the zone, played 72 holes, shot after shot after shot, running my process, and boom, there I was at the end of it, holding the US Open trophy, which in reflection is one of the most special wins of my career for other reasons as well. It was on Father's Day. I was a father myself. My kids were at home. My dad was up in the sky. Unfortunately, I'd lost him about a decade before that. And time's a bit of a healer, right? Obviously, it was a very emotional time in my life, losing my dad. He was so involved in my career. I lost him at age 21 in 2002. Life moves on. Obviously, he's in my thoughts a lot, but a decade later, you're on with your life and things have moved on a little bit. But I had this amazingly strong and powerful connection to him over that weekend because it was Father's Day looming. Obviously, clearly in my thoughts more. And I was just having some rhetorical back and forth questions to myself during that weekend. And he would often read me. So he would sort of like hold me by my shoulders, look into my eyes and say, how you feeling today? Or he would tell me how I was feeling today. He felt like he had a really good connection with my mindset. So I was driving to the golf course one day, on the Saturday, the third round of the tournament. And I sort of kind of caught a bit of a glance of myself in the rearview mirror of the car. And I was like, oh, how am I looking today, Dad? Sort of having this conversation with myself on the way to the golf course. And then my coach sent me a beautiful text message on the morning of the final round. So Father's Day itself, he said, go out there and be the man that your dad taught you to be and the man that your kids can look up to. So my performance on the Sunday was about process, but it was also about carrying myself the right way in victory or in defeat. And I feel like that mindset kind of really gave me a clear objective on how I wanted to approach that final round. And yes, amazing it ended in victory. Amazing it ended with me with a moment of being able to kind of look up to the heavens and honor my dad in the most powerful way possible by winning and fulfilling his dreams as well as mine. But the ability to just have had a clear mindset of, what, I'm going to carry myself in the way that would make him proud no matter what the result was really. And obviously the kids at home too, often the better you handle yourself in defeat is the more powerful message to send to someone you want to inspire. But at the same time, much more fun to do it in victory.
I think a sad way in which I can relate to is I sadly lost my mum last year. And I think I would agree with the idea that, like for me, less about the Father's Day, because it was my mum, obviously,
Yeah.
but for me, like the full moon, for some whatever reason, is a big way that I relate to my mum. And I think it was like full moon yesterday. And it's
Right.
even like those little things that enable you to like relate to that parent. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, you've lost a parent, like, that's so awful, blah, 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 blah. And yes, whilst that is true, there's still like, it still goes back to being backed into that corner, you feel like you've got that inner extra punch, and you also feel like you've got like whatever your religious beliefs, you feel like you've got like an angel or some spirit on your shoulders driving you forward.
Absolutely. No, I think, while my dad was in his passing moments or, days, he took a little bit of peace. I think that he had taught me, he had a lot of confidence in me that I was going to be the man that, I'd grown up. He had faith that I was going to be okay. He said to my mum, Justin's going to be okay. And, seeing the young man you're turning out to be, I'm sure your mum feels exactly the same way, mate.
Thank you very much. Whilst you're on any form of golf competition against all these people, which I'm sure many people listening are big fans of, from Tiger Woods to literally anyone, you can name anyone. What's your relationship with these other players while playing in a tournament? Is there chat? Are they texting you after you do well or badly in a day? Are they speaking to the media saying, Justin's doing really well, Justin's doing really bad? Or do you just switch off your phone? You don't talk to anyone. You just focus on your own game. Or you see someone's doing incredibly well and you're like, I need to, I know you said not to force a few shots, but maybe I have to try extra hard. Like, how do you navigate your relationship towards other players when in a tournament?
Great question. I think typically the less you say about other players, the better, certainly in the media. Obviously, if it's complimentary, great, but even that can always come across a bit strangely. I think that there's often a mutual respect out there. That's definitely a given. I think that there's a competitive respect and a mutual respect that you never try to influence anybody else's performance on a given day. So, I would say there's very few gamesmanship tactics that are played out on tour. In the Ryder Cup or in President's Cup or something like that, there's obviously match play. Now it's very much a one-on-one type of mindset. You might try to influence the game in whatever way you can by just being an athlete and a competitor and, with anything within the rules that you can do to, make your presence felt within a match. I think that's all great. But in a 72-hole competition where ultimately the competitor is the golf course and another 150 players, the grouping in which you're paired, it's all very respectful. You go about your business. There's a little bit of chat on and off the ball for sure. Walking down fairways, how the kids, what are you up to? What are you playing next week? When's your next tournament? Just often a lot of general chit chat. And then I think, in terms of texting guys, you have your mates out there for sure. It's a bit of a traveling circus. There's going to be guys in your friendship group. There's going to be always a group of 5 or 6 guys that you're close with. And, when you see them play well or they do well, of course, you're on the phone, you text them, there's group WhatsApps, we're on Ryder Cup group WhatsApps, which a year later is still very active. Guys are getting married or things are going on, or even guys that have gone off to the live tour, still part of the group chat. They win or do well. Yes, there's definitely a lot of support, I would say, for other good performances. But in the moment, I think there's that sort of protected unwritten rule of may the best man on the day win. So I think that everyone's going about there and just focusing on their own performance as best they can. And definitely towards the end of a tournament, the chat disappears. And I would say I had an amazing experience playing with Tiger Woods back in, I want to say it's about 2007. And I think we were playing in Chicago. We were both doing really well in the tournament. It was the Sunday. We were 2 or 3 groups from the final group, so we were towards the top end of the leaderboard, but not leading. And the first few holes felt super relaxed. I'm talking with Tiger, and we're talking about the Bahamas, and he was diving, and he was showing me a cut on his hands. Amore eel bit me here. I was trying to get a lobster out the pothole. Typical Tiger story, really, actually. Like Superman type of stuff. But I'm thinking to myself, God, I'm best mate of Tiger Woods. This is awesome. We're chit-chatting, and we're both playing really well, 3 or 4 under par for the round. And then we hit the back 9, and all of a sudden he just went like into another place, super focused. The chat stopped. He started doing everything really slowly. I could just tell his visualization went through the roof, and he continued to play unbelievable golf. I think he shot 7 or 8 or 9 under par, won the tournament, and that was like a masterclass for me. So beginning of the round was like this relaxed mindset, which probably helped both of our games because you can be too intense sometimes, but he timed his intensity perfectly. He's like, we had this relaxed mindset. And then as the round went on and there was the opportunity to win and close out the tournament, he went to another place. And I would say that's typical on tour in the sense of when there's a lot of pressure, there's not a lot of chat. But yeah, that for me as a sort of a slightly younger pro was incredible to see that ability to turn the switch.
I think what's been very unusual about golf in the past few years is the rise of there's three major tours: the DP World Tour, PGA Tour, and now with the rise of Live Golf.
Yeah.
How have you found all of that? I mean, I had a conversation with Guy Hemings, who was the deputy CEO of the DP World Tour and
Yes, good friend,
director of the Ryder Cup. While that deal was supposed to go through, or it's still going through, or whatever's going on in that department. But how do you navigate all this external? I don't want to call it bullshit, but I feel like that's an appropriate word to use when you guys just want to play golf against the best other people, play the best golf, play the best competitions. That's why you're playing the sport in the first place, and you've got all these external things going on. How do you navigate all of these distractions?
Yeah, it has been very messy and very noisy golf for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think, the major tours need to have a look at themselves and realize that they actually created an opportunity for somebody to come in and disrupt. They didn't do a good enough job of disrupting themselves early enough. And I think by that, I mean, they created a bit of a diluted product. There were too many tournaments. Sponsors were sponsoring too many tournaments in the sense of they were hoping to get the top players. The top players weren't showing up to all of these tournaments because the top players only wanted to play about 20 to 25 times a year max. But yet there were 42 tournaments on tour. So of course there's going to be a bunch of sponsors let down, probably signed on with the hope of getting top players. Top players weren't showing up. So there was this opportunity to curate the best players in the world to play together for a more condensed schedule. And the rumblings of this have been going on for 7 to 10 years, to be honest with you. But then all of a sudden, Saudi Arabia came in with a PIF and big money and kind of accelerated this process and kind of came into it with a slightly half-baked product, but, a bit of the field of dreams, build it and they will come type of mentality. But there were a lot of unanswered questions with that. And I think that ultimately it's created, so there was too much... it's diluted the product even more is my point really. So instead of condensing us all together for the 20 to 25 weeks a year, have DP World Tour trying to survive. You have the PGA Tour, which is still probably the strongest, most viable product to go and test your skills against the best. And then, Live have disrupted for sure. They've done a great job of creating traction. They're a viable product now for the most part in terms of there's enough good players over there that if you win, it has some value. You've beaten some really top players, but at the same time, it doesn't really have any history. The tournaments don't mean that much. The venues aren't great. The crowd base isn't huge. They don't have the history to make it feel like a big tournament. So in a sense, you're just playing golf for money over there. So it's a bit of a mess, right? But there's enough top players over there that is decreasing the overall value of golf as well in terms of, but saying that though, the major championships are the ultimate winners here because they're the only tournaments where all the top players are actually turning up and competing. So the major championships should probably be slightly happy about the whole situation because it really enhances their event like nothing else. But there's been a lot of confusing talk in the media about re-emerging or coming back together and merging. And I still think we're a long way from that because we don't have a product that supports it. PGA Tour January to August, that's great. The European Tour has a great end of season run, I think. Where do you fit in team golf in that? Without the players playing 35 times a year, which is just not going to happen. So again, I still think we're back to square one with what is the core product that we're trying to sell. And that's what they're going to have to fix. But at the end of the day, for me personally, I want to be eligible for the major championships. I still have those childhood dreams I want to accomplish. And by playing on something like the Live, I don't have the opportunity to tick those boxes because there's no world ranking points. There's no pathway for me to come play in the majors. So therefore, I have to kind of stay with the status quo to earn the points, to earn the rankings, to get into the majors, to chase my childhood dreams. So for me, in a nutshell, that's kind of how it works.
You've got an amazing family, an amazing team. You've got golf, and you also started the Kate and Justin Rose Foundation. If I was to ask you at the end of your life, what would you want your legacy to be, and how would you want to be remembered?
Oh, wow. Great question. First and foremost, great family man, father, husband. I think, that's where you want to have your most impact because, they're the ones carrying the name, right? I think hopefully they can go on and, achieve what they want to achieve in their life. But I think all of the little mini messages that Kate and I are able to kind of instill, you want to see your family and their family, I guess, be successful in whatever that means to them. That's the best legacy you can have in life. I think it's for someone else to judge. It's a subjective thing. It's not for me to kind of try to contrive what I feel like my legacy should or could be. And I certainly don't think it helps. I don't think thinking about your legacy makes you make the right decisions in the moment. Um, so I'm not really aware of what I want it to be other than within my own family. So yeah, tough question. But I think just overall, being a great competitor who's played with integrity, and done their best to kind of help, the game's given me so much, and just pay that forward in whatever small way you can. The scale of what you can achieve, I don't know. That you need a lot of help with that. You need there's a lot of other people that are involved that make things like that happen. But I just think day to day, you just got to try to do your best to lead by example. What that kind of snowballs into, who the heck knows? But I think if you try to leave too big a legacy, I think it's convoluted. You make decisions for the wrong reasons. But just I guess you got to walk the walk and talk the talk daily. Just do the little things daily, and just try to do it with as much integrity as possible, and then that adds up to whatever it's going to be.
My penultimate question. We've referred back to a lot about Justin Rose's dreams as a kid. What are Justin Rose's dreams in 2024, and what's next for you over the next few years?
Yeah, great. I mean, good question. I think I'm in that stage of my career where I'm fighting to keep it going for as long as I can. I'm fighting to be relevant. I'm fighting to still believe in myself that I have that highest level available to me. And I think that, I finished second in the Open Championship this year, which, as heartbreaking as that was, it was also incredibly inspiring to know that that level of golf is still available to me, which has given me the motivation to continue to want to work hard and make the sacrifices I need to make in order to be top level player still. So that was a rewarding moment this year. I'm moving into slightly different fields as well. Like next year, I'm going to captain my first professional team in the Team Cup, which is GB&I versus Europe. So moving into more of the elder statesman kind of roles that often come, towards the end of a career. So some leadership roles, whether that then turns into vice captains and captains of other teams down the line, who knows? But yeah, all of those would be certainly goals and progressions for me, and they're going to challenge me in totally different ways. So I need to stay nimble. I need to stay learning. I need to, team leaders in business, I'm sure, have read so many amazing books and that have helped them manage teams. And I'm probably going to have to go on a crash course in terms of some of those types of skill sets. Of course, I've always managed my own team, and again, leading by example is the best way, and having empathy and um, celebrating people's difference of opinion, I think, is probably the best way to start any of that. But knowing a great team requires a bunch of different types of personalities coming together for a common goal. But yeah, learning to be a good team leader, I suppose, in the future. But hanging on desperately as I can to performance is my goal. You're a long time retired, hopefully. So I think for me right now, it's like really trying to squeeze out the most I can out of my playing career. And I know that there's probably a finite time where I can still be really great.
And my final question, and I ask this to every guest, is what is one thing that you would want a listener to take away from this episode?
That I guess really like nothing's ever changed in my career from day one to now. I'm still about, can I be better tomorrow than I am today? And the marginal gains approach, the mastery of the craft, that's what excites me. Yeah, made a lot of money in golf. I've achieved my dreams. I've got to world #1, but ultimately none of that stuff's made me happy. It's always been the pursuit of slightly better. That's the thing that gives me joy. So it's still the passion in the craft and the pursuit of mastery of that craft that has kept me going this long and given me a 25-year plus kind of successful career. It's not because of the rewards, it's because of the pursuit of the actual task itself. So I think that's what you need to lean into. That's what you need to find your joy in. And that's what ultimately gives you, I think, the most success, but the longevity you need to sustain high performance.
I think it's, I don't want to play like devil's advocate, but I would actually disagree with the idea that your legacy is decided for you. I think that the incredible way that you've gone about creating this like set moral principles and how you act both on and off the golf course, leading in the golf world, but also the foundation you've created with your family. I think your huge emphasis on family is incredible. And I didn't want to say you'd be bored telling your story, but I feel like everyone keeps coming back to this point of you had these 21 cuts and then you did blah, 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 blah. And I think for many people that would have been the defining part of their journey. And then winning a major would have been a defining part. And then winning the Olympics and winning the Ryder Cup and becoming #1 in the world. And it's almost like you've lived four lives in 4 professional golf lives in one to achieve such amazing heights. And I think it's incredibly inspiring that even at this point in time, you still have that inner hunger to be the best. And I think that's anything that anyone can take at any point in their life. And it gives them the inspiration to keep going, to keep trying, and to keep trying to become #1, no matter where they have or haven't been in the past. So thank you so much, Justin. I really enjoyed our time and I feel like I learned a lot.
Thank you, Harvey. And yeah, thanks for distilling that into that final closing message. And appreciate all the work you're doing, and I'll keep tuning in.